is for you. Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Caribbean. Here's a quick commercial from our friends over at Seaside.
Hey there, Browns fans. Pack your bags for the ultimate dog pound at sea party on the amazing Independence of the Seas in March of 2024 as we embark on a 5-day all-inclusive Caribbean cruise. Spend time with your favorite Browns alumni like Josh Cribbs, Eric Metcalf, Webster Slaughter, and many more. Presented by Seaside Events. Cabins are selling fast, so book yours now. Visit BrownsFanCruise.com or call 216-284-6472 today.
As whether it is sophisticated suburban living, luxury downtown digs, or senior housing, K&D, the largest property management company in Northeast Ohio, has a perfect home for everyone. K&D is your one-stop shop for housing in the region with apartments and amenities for everyone, including residential, commercial, retail, and also corporate housing. Find your dream home at K&D. Visit knd.com to get started. That is the letter K. The listeners about the Barley House.
Guys, if you can't, or if you are in town this weekend, go to the Barley House. Have fun, go down there, enjoy it for those away games while they're down in Houston. By the way, if you add us on Instagram, and add the Barley House, you are entered to win a $30 gift card to go down there and have some fun at that Barley House. $30 gift card if you go and add us on Instagram. So go do that. We will pick a winner. We've already picked 4 or 5 winners from that. And then, by the way, the guys you don't want to miss.
Send them. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. It's the iconic brand, the iconic taste. It's beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard, rich in both taste and tradition, and it's loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. And Dustin, real quick, why don't you tell our listeners about Cleveland whiskey?
Cleveland whiskey, guys. If you're getting stressed during a game and you feel like it's Cardiac Kids 2.0, grab some Cleveland whiskey, peanut butter chocolate, the Cleveland Underground bourbon whiskey finished with black cherry wood or that wheat penny. Get any of their brands. And by the way, the Christmas spiced whiskey is almost out in the Cleveland area. Go get it for a great Christmas gift or go to clevelandwhiskey.com to find a local liquor store to see where it's at or ask for it at your local drinking establishment. Ali, just real quick on the Stadium Mustard, go down there and check out the code for 25% off through Christmas Eve.
Before we bring on our next guest, this interview with Browns legend Leroy Hoard is brought to you by our good friends over at Circle K.
Browns fans, get ready for a sizzling sensation that's about to heat up your taste buds. Circle K is bringing you a hot deal this football season. Introducing Circle K's Hot Chicken Wings. And the best part, the price is as hot as the wings themselves. Pick up 6 wings for just $5.99 at your local Circle K today. So what are you waiting for? Gather your friends, your family, and anyone else who craves the ultimate wing experience. Circle K, where every deal is hotter than ever before. Here we go, Brownies. Only at Circle K.
Let's bring them on. We've got Leroy Hoard on the line. Leroy, how's it going?
What's happening?
Thanks for taking the time. This is fun.
I really shouldn't be this emotional about football, but some kind of way these damn Browns sucked me in. They sucked me in, and I finally, after yelling at the TV all year, yelling at Kevin Stefanski to run the ball more, right? Hoping Deshaun Watson can play 5 weeks in a row so he can get some consistency, some continuity, and get back. Because the only way you're going to get back to what you were is repetition. Right? Consistent play, consistent situations. He's been getting banged up, which I can't, one of the hardest things here's what was one of the hardest things I had to do every year. Every year, they didn't want the running backs taking any unnecessary hits. We had to go into a preseason game, and I had to say to the coach, I need about 10 or 15 carries today. I need to learn how to fall. I need to learn how to take hits. I need to know how to get my body right to hit. And I got to do that before the season. That's something you can't go through at the beginning of the season.
Right.
So many athletes today think that they can just do these things when the season starts And a lot of times you see a lot of unfortunate injuries or guys just looking really bad because they haven't gone through that. And when we were very accustomed to going through that in camp. So I see a lot of that. But for Deshaun, just finally seeing, a glimpse of what he was and how everybody kind of rallied behind him and the stones that he showed playing hurt. Do you understand if Deshaun could have came back this following week, that means now he's got everybody in that locker room because they saw him do Deshaun Watson things.
Right.
It's one thing to say that's Deshaun Watson. It's another thing to see Deshaun Watson be that guy that you've seen from across the room or on the other side of the field. And finally, we got a glimpse of it. And so it's unfortunate. I really wish people would understand just by what he did and what he went through and continue to play with it. Now you got to go back and give him the benefit of the doubt in the beginning of the year when everybody was saying, oh, well, the coach said the doctor cleared him and he was this, he was that. Never, ever, ever. And I will fight every fan in the country that looks at a guy and looks at a player and says he should play with that. You don't know. You don't know what that guy is experiencing. You don't know. Just because they put a name on the injury doesn't necessarily mean that that's it. Yeah. You have an ankle injury and then you try to run on that ankle and your knee and hip hurt. Like it's a complicated thing. So to sit here and try to determine on your butt what a guy can play with is really unfair to that professional.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And at this point in the game, Leroy, I know a lot of fans, we need to probably take a day or two to kind of grasp what this means for the team and go through the grieving process because, man, this is a really big blow to your team and the organization and really the trajectory that you thought that they were going to be on, especially Leroy after that performance, especially in the second half, 14-14 and what he did to be able to, man, just be the Deshaun Watson of old to go win that game in Baltimore.
Right.
So
come back from 14 down and yes.
I mean, it's vintage. So my question for you is, what does the team do going forward? I mean, obviously we know that DTR is going to be the starter. Yep. We've got PJ Walker. We know what we have in those guys. And I think that setting DTR up with a game plan.
He's a little more athletic. He's a little more athletic. He can get you maybe some off schedule plays, a little more of that. But here's the thing. See, one of the things you have to appreciate, right? Deshaun Watson played great for a half. Mm-hmm. He was okay before then. What that offensive line and the running game and the defense has done. I'm not discrediting any of that and saying because a quarterback played one great half of football that now that means the season's over. I ain't giving up yet. No, I'm not that easy, right? And I would hope that this team and these guys have done enough on the football field for you to not give up hope just because a guy who played one decent half of football, right, is gone. And this is not taking because I'm a Deshaun Watson fan, and what I saw, the first thing that came to mind was, if we can get him for 3 or 4 weeks and build on this, then we got something, right? That being said, the way the defense played, the way they shut down Lamar Jackson, come on. The way that offensive line, after getting juggled around, the way the running backs have played, the wide receivers, Njoku. That team, like, that's too much talent. I'm not just giving up like that, right? And so for people to say, oh, no, it's over because Deshaun Watson's hurt. No, man. In the past, you could say that about one player on the Browns team if it was, important enough player. Mm-hmm. But can you say that with the way the whole team is played? Mm. Are they going to be as good? No. Right? But I ain't giving up hope because I've seen what that defense has done to some of the great offensive weapons in this game. and have just shut them down.
Well,
They had Lamar Jackson on his heels, which is unbelievable.
right. Well, and you think about it, someone like Lamar Jackson was coming into that game with the best completion ratio in the entire league, right? And for them to figure out and adjust and do the things they were to him. And I think we have sometimes amnesia. Like, I think anybody would have said that PJ Walker and the Browns are not going to beat San Francisco at home, and it's a 10-point underdog. But guess who didn't not believe that? The Cleveland Browns in that locker room. They believed, they thought they could win that game, and they went out and showed everybody, like, well, you don't believe in us, but we believe in ourselves. So I agree, Leroy, you bring up a good point. They're not going to just turn over and be like, oh, we're done, season's over.
Right.
Oh, well, me, or whatever. They're going to be like, no, we've come too far, and we've already faced so much adversity. I think the team just gets more galvanized and stronger, in my opinion. I mean, here's a team that dealt with, in week 2, a Nick Chubb out for the season, right? I think most fans would say, okay, pack it in. Okay, no problem. Oh, wait, now we lost our quarterback, and now we have PJ Walker.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
and Jack Conklin, by the way, our Pro Bowl right tackle.
Yeah. So I look at it as this team is playing more, and Allie and I brought this up on previous shows, and you've been a part of a lot of teams, Lori, but I feel like this team is more of a team than I've seen other Browns teams. They are really a unit, and they rally around each other, and that's why when they were even down by 14, they never gave up hope.
Here's what I would say. That there's 3 guys that have been added, and I'm not including any players, or I include one player, but the 2 D tackles, right, have made it so much easier for Myles Garrett, right? Because there's pressure up the middle. And in years past, they let the 2 outside guys rush and they'd run right down the throat, right? This was happening to the Browns, and they couldn't get there. Now there's pressure up the middle. So now when that quarterback sees the outside rush and he steps up, there's nowhere to go, right? But even more important, Jim Schwartz, Bill Callahan, and Deshaun Watson. You added those 3 guys, and it has changed the culture of your team. The way that defense plays, right? It's damn near the same talent, guys. Why are they so different now? The attitude, the standard in which they play defense has been raised to a level where now they go on the field and demand it of each other, right? It's amazing. When you look at that offensive line, how many times in the last couple of years, oh, Conklin's out. We don't, who are we going to put in? It's this, it's that. They don't miss a beat. They still run the football. So the attitude of that offensive line has changed. And then you have Deshaun Watson come in. And I know it's been a little shaky, right? But I got to tell you, you hear anybody say anything bad about Deshaun Watson? They all follow him. And that's a first in a while that a guy on offense can go into a locker room at that position and have everybody's undivided attention, right? I mean, Baker had some of that, but at times everybody thought it was about Baker, right? Not about the team. And so those guys have come in there, and the same exact guys have played a different level of football. And so I think there's enough guys that recognize how they're supposed to play and the standard in which they play, that they can keep that going. And so it'll be, it's been a while since I've watched Browns football and felt, before the Deshaun Watson injury, this confident about this team. Yeah. Because, this is a Browns fan, oh, the team played well, but it's coming, right? I mean, you just know that's what I hear.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear any of that. No. They're like, wow, the way the defense is playing, the way the secondary is getting turnovers, the way the offensive line is blocking, even when guys hurt, the way the running backs, look, those guys aren't Nick Chubb. But are they being productive? Absolutely. And so that's the thing you have to look forward to now.
Yeah.
Are they going to be as productive? Maybe not. But can we have success? Absolutely.
You can't replace Nick Chubb, right? And I don't think we can go into this now at this point in the season and say you can replace Deshaun Watson, because you can't. Right. I mean, these are players with very specific skill sets. Very few in the league can do what they do. And I know that there were some question marks surrounding what Deshaun Watson can do, given the rust, the injuries, what have you. But nonetheless, he's very talented. Not discounting that. But I guess my question to you, Leroy, is the confidence that you have in whether it's DTR or PJ. Let's just hypothetically speaking here, that they don't bring in a Nick Foles, they don't bring in a Matt Ryan or anybody like that. Let's just say they roll out the rest of the season with the guys on this roster. How comfortable are you with that?
Here's what I'm more comfortable in. I'm more comfortable that the coaching staff got a dry run on what it's going to look like and how to make adjustments. Right? Like, let's not just look at the players. It's the coach's job to put the players in a position to be successful. They got a dry run of, we ain't going to do this again. Right? So maybe while we're looking at the players, why don't we look at the coaching staff who also got an extensive look at what these guys can do? Because I wouldn't be surprised if earlier in the season, they were getting the offense ready for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
And not necessarily game planning for what DTR or PJ Walker could do. You see what I'm saying? They were setting up plays and things of that nature. Now, they know Deshaun Watson's out for the year. We have to come up with a game plan, and we have to design stuff that fits the skill set of these two guys. And as far as sign, look, I hate to tell people, right? There's a reason why these guys are sitting at home. They ain't sitting at home waiting for the best opportunity, because what is the hardest position in the world to fill? Quarterback. And there's a bunch of teams right now that are out with one of those finders on the sand trying to find a quarterback. Right? So for anybody who thinks they could just name a name and have that guy come in and be able to play to that name at 37 plus, you're out of your damn mind. So stop that. Let's just get him in. Let's just bring
There's only one. There's only one.
There's one.
There's one if they called him up.
No, absolutely not. No. Like, I don't know what like you're at this point, you would be signing a name and not a player. And so you need to cut that out. Cut it out. No, stop. Let's be real. Okay? And you can mention Tom Brady. You can mention all these guys. You know who's undefeated? Father Time. You see that commercial with Emmitt Smith and Randy Moss and all them guys saying, let's make a comeback? That's what it looks like. That's real. Father Time is undefeated. Stop trying to say we're going to come back. Oh, he could just come back and not do what? And not do what? One of the reasons why they out of the league now, because they were throwing it to the other team too damn much. All of them, except for Tom Brady.
Yeah, right? I mean, I think that's probably the exception. And I don't think
46.
Right. No, I know, but I'm just saying. My point being is you can't replace the player that you had.
Right.
You can't and not only replacing the player, Leroy, but all of the off-season preparation that went into the season. Right. The offensive philosophy, playing to his skill set, who he is as a player. The scheme, you can't change that at this point in the season. We're already beyond halfway here. It is what it is. We've got to roll out with the personnel we have. Now, hearing Andrew Berry's press availability today, he did mention they do anticipate bringing in a third quarterback. You have to have it. Depth.
He'll be young.
Understand that.
He'll be young. He'll be less than 30.
I think we need to pump the brakes as a fan base, saying that Tom Brady's going to come save the franchise, because it's not happening. It's not happening.
Really?
Well,
You think Tom Brady is going to bring?
No. That's what everybody's saying. That's what everybody's
Right.
saying on Twitter,
That's
on
crazy.
Facebook. I think we need to get off of that.
As much as I love what Tom Brady has done in his career, right? Okay. No. No. Like what we can't first of all, you have to understand. Okay. Let's just think of it this way. How long are you going to think it's going to take him to pick up the offense? Okay. Mm-hmm. How long do you think it's going to take him to get in halfway decent football shape? It's already November.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about we're going to give him to the middle of December? What's your record going to look like?
By the time you get there, right?
Right. So I'll take my chance with what's on the roster. Give that guy 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, the point I would bring up is like the one thing about DTR, and I understand what they're doing with DTR and rolling him out there. You're going to give him some valuable experience going forward if he's successful, right? You drafted him to be the backup to Deshaun Watson, right? So he's going to have that valuable. And Allie, you and I both know we went to a Browns game last year where Jacoby Brissett beat a Tom Brady football team in Cleveland, right? So it's not like, he's going to be the savior, to your point.
No. So Dustin, to your point about the experience that DTR was going to get at this point forward, right? Whether it's PJ, whether it's DTR, the experience that they're going to get is invaluable. But what we're not talking about is the experience that they have had up until this point.
Right.
They are the only two, and I mean more DTR than PJ. He came in several weeks into the season, but they are the only two quarterbacks in the National Football League that have been in this organization, that have taken reps with these players, that know the verbiage. And I think that is invaluable.
Right. Just think about this. When a quarterback hasn't played with a team, they don't even talk about the quarterback's ability. You know what they talk about? The timing with the wide receivers.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? How long do you think that's going to take? So for people to just think you're going to pull a name
there's no plug
off the street. No. Because I promise you, if Nick Foles could play football, there's a couple of jobs out there, right? You think Bill Belichick wouldn't kick the tires on that?
Right.
How about the Jets?
Yeah.
So stop. Like, we got to, like, I get it. I get it. But the reality of it is that where your team is, right, you have a better chance of being successful with what you have in the locker room. Because guess what? I got to tell you, when I was a young player and somebody got hurt and I had to go in, you know who picked me up? The guys that I've been with for the last 6 months. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's going to be the case. If a new guy come in, right? They know what that guy's going through. They've seen him play. They know what he's like. They know the wide receivers are going to say, you know what, let's help him out. Right? Let's do that extra, let's catch some bad balls. Let's do whatever we got to do. It just seems to me that that's where this team is right now, with the confidence that they've been playing with at the most important positions of success, offense and defensive line.
Mm.
So I for everybody to just say, like, and here's what I hate about sports. This is what I hate. If you guys get a new job, right, and somebody come in and you screw it up, you know what you say to them? I'm new here. Right? we get into the NFL and you have 2 or 3 bad games, you suck forever. I'm like, hey, man.
It's true.
2 months ago, I was playing in the Rose Bowl. Now I'm playing in the NFL. I might need a minute. But people don't have patience with that.
No,
if
you're
there's
right.
If there's anything that I've learned from my own experiences, right, is that to say that a 21 or 22-year-old is ready to play against a 30 to 35-year-old grown-ass man, right? Let's give him a minute. Let's give him a chance. It's called development for a reason, right? Very few guys go into the league playing their best football. Very few. Hell, look at Deshaun Watson. They wanted him to play wide receiver. And now he is the best passer of all the running backs that have ever, of all the running quarterbacks that have ever come into the league. The purest passer of all of them. Think about it. Name a better passer with better completion, with fewer interceptions than Lamar Jackson, that also runs for the amount of yards he runs for.
Mm-hmm.
See? So it took a minute. So I'm not ready to just, DTR, he's telling me he can't do it. Dude, he ain't been in the league a year. Right?
It is all about patience. And I think that's what us as fans and us surrounding the organization have to have as we go into this. Leroy.
Or get you one of these.
There
right?
you go. There you go.
Get you one of these.
Drink.
and then it won't matter.
Hey, Leroy, thanks for taking the time for us. We greatly appreciate it. It was great
problem.
talking to you. I know this is a difficult conversation and something totally unexpected, but we appreciate your candor here as we close this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Leroy. Have a good night.
That is Leroy Horde, and we are going to transition right away here and bring on Jay Crawford. But before we do so, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Cleveland Furniture Company. Guys, if you like saving money, which I know I do, head on over to Cleveland Furniture Company for all of your furniture needs. They buy in bulk direct from the factories. They are a true locally owned and family business. So be sure to head on over to the Cleveland Furniture Company today. And this interview with Jay Crawford is brought to you from the couch.
From the Couch is brought to you by the Cleveland Furniture Company.
Let's bring them on. We've got Jay Crawford. Jay, thanks for taking the time. How are you?
I'm great. I love that Leroy gets to be my warm-up act.
Well,
he brings the juice. He brings the energy.
I got a
he
funny
does that, yeah.
I got a funny story, Jay. So I was texting him, and I told him we were going to have you on. He goes, "That is my man. Jay is my guy." And so
Leroy is my guy.
Yeah, I know he comes on and does a weekly segment with you guys. So he was, he's like, "Oh, Jay's gonna be a lot of fun." But he was, what I love about Leroy, he's always fired up. He's ready to go, and he is non-apologetic. And I kind of really appreciate that candor, because sometimes people like to, as Ali and I, put the brown and orange rose-colored glasses on, right? And he just takes them off.
And that's why we like him so much on our show, because fans want to hear. Sometimes they don't want to hear the truth; they just want to hear the good news, and it's not always good news. And the one thing I like about Leroy is he doesn't hold back, man. He comes at you with both barrels, and the word you use is perfect. It's unapologetic. That's why he's perfect for our show. As you look at the roles that are filled in our show, we've got, the ultimate Kool-Aid guy and cheerleader and G. Bush. And then, Adam isn't really the Browns fan. He's kind of given us the outside view from 30,000 feet. Mm-hmm. So Adam the Bull is, he often tells it the way it is. But I think the one thing that I said before I decided to do this show was, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to be a cheerleader. I'm not going to be a homer. There's going to be moments where I'm a fan for sure, but I'm going to tell it the way I see it. Might not be the way others see it, but and I think that's why we work, because we all come at it with a different perspective.
That's what this show's here for too. We try to take our orange or brown colored glasses off, and it's hard sometimes. And to close with Leroy, we talk about patience and what we have to have as a fan base. And as we broadcast this show, we're doing a show today that we didn't expect to have, Jay. And I want to get your perspective on this and what this means for the team going forward. I know that there's a lot of speculation out there on what the Browns organization is going to do to, quote unquote, replace Deshaun Watson. And when I was talking to Leroy, I said, you can't. Just like Nick Chubb, you can't replace the player. It's just going to be about pivoting. So just give me kind of your thoughts surrounding the situation and what this means for the team.
Well, it's obviously a setback. Deshaun Watson still hasn't reached the level of play that landed him in Cleveland when he was in Houston. I think we'd all agree on that. But I also think that he was getting close to that. And it seemed like every half of football he played, he was inching closer and closer to it. If you take, he had a bad first half on Sunday. He had a bad first half 2 weeks ago. But his second halves were great. And when you go back to the Tennessee game, which was the last game before his injury, he played great. So he was starting to become that guy. And now they've got to replace him. And look, I understand the next man up mentality. I also understand that, the rhetoric that was coming from the Browns brass today and Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski that, we like the room still, that you can't spit on me and tell me that it's raining. When you look at what we have there, and this isn't really a knock on the two guys. PJ Walker is what he is. We knew what he was.
Right.
He's a turnover machine. In his career, he's thrown for 6 touchdowns. He's accounted for 18 turnovers. That's the wrong ratio. That's going the wrong way. DTR, unfair to judge him on his one start because he found out at 10:30 the morning of that Ravens game that he was going to be starting. He didn't prepare all week like he was the starter, like he will this time around. So I really don't want to judge him too harshly for that. He had, he was a spotlit deer, and he threw 3 interceptions and no touchdowns. And I think now that that he's likely going to be the force that guides this team moving forward, you change everything that you're doing. You're dumbing down the offense to the point where everything is short underneath stuff. And I know that's easier to stop than the over-the-top stuff, particularly when the other teams know it's coming. But you got to do what you think is going to work. Look, our defense is a championship caliber defense. I firmly believe that. So you don't have to ask the offense to do too much. I was in Tampa when Trent Dilfer was there, and they had a championship caliber defense. And Trent, by no means, was a great quarterback. He turned the ball over a lot. His TD to interception ratio was not good. Although the Bucs never won it with Trent. Trent was moved to Baltimore, where he came back to Tampa when the Super Bowl was in Tampa and led the Ravens to a championship season. And he wasn't asked to do much. I know Trent probably doesn't like this term, but he was a game manager. That's what we need. We need somebody. Look, Trent, DTR was 19 of 36. It's not going to light the world on fire, but it's better than 50%. What you have to take out of the equation is the turnovers. And I think that's fixable. So I want to see him for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Hopefully we'll see progression week to week to week. Look, we beat San Francisco with PJ Walker. So no one's going to tell me that this team can't still make the playoffs with DTR, who's going to become hopefully more confident and more proficient as the weeks go on. I think we need to bring in another quarterback. As much as I love Leroy, we just disagreed on this topic on today's show. He thinks you're fine and you're going to roll with what you have. I think you need a steady force, even if he doesn't hit the field, somebody that can sit down with DTR when the defense is on the field and show him what is going on the field and slow things down for him. I know that that's what the coaches are there for, but sometimes you have to have one of your peers that have been in that situation. And I would love it if they could bring in a veteran. We'll see which direction they go with it. But I do want to see what DTR can do. He won this spot because of how he played in the preseason. I think he has it in him. So let's give him a chance. Let's continue to get championship caliber play out of this incredible defense. I think we're going to beat Pittsburgh Sunday. I do. I could be crazy, but I think we're going to win.
Look, that's been the general vibe. And with everybody I've talked to, they're kind of saying the same thing. Like, I've got this feeling, we're going to beat Pittsburgh. And maybe you kind of embrace that adversity. But I want to go back to DTR just a little bit. And he was put in an absolutely impossible situation, his first start against Baltimore. And it's really hard to judge him off of that. I do think that we're probably going in the right direction with starting him and surrounding a game plan around his strengths and what he's able to do. But I do want to talk about that third quarterback. Andrew Berry did bring up in his press availability that, look, we're eventually going to bring somebody else in. We need a third quarterback. And I think that's obvious. Is there anybody on the market currently that, is there a name out there? I know there's a ton of speculation right now, but to kind of filter through that, is there anybody that really entices you to come in and be that role? Or play
Not
that
really.
Role, rather?
I mean, in a fantasy land, I would love for Tom Brady to come in here, but that's not happening. I would like, Matt Ryan was talked about a lot today. Yeah. He was a guy that last year still, as much as everybody wants to beat him up for what he did last year, he still completed 66% of his passes, and he still threw more touchdowns than interceptions. And so I think Matt Ryan would be a guy, if he'd be willing to step down from his broadcast booth at CBS. I'd be willing to kick the tires on him. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl as a backup quarterback. So even if he doesn't come in and take the job from DTR, I think here's a guy that could really help DTR navigate these backup waters and tell them what to expect and how to deal with the media and how to deal with the fans and how to deal with week in and week out preparation. He's been there and he's done that. Nick was always, I thought, most effective when he was coming off the bench. It seems whenever he won the job as the starter, he just woefully underperformed. It was in that role of put the cape on and get in there. The building's on fire, and Nick seemed to catch every baby that they threw out of the building. So there's only a few guys. Earl Morrall, you got to go way back to the 70s, and the last time there was a perfect season in the NFL, the Dolphins lost Bob Greasy, and Earl Morrall came in and righted the ship and took them to a Super Bowl championship. So there's very few guys that I can think of off the top of my head that have done that. And because Nick is still, I think he's 36, 38, I don't know, he's somewhere in his 30s. I know he hasn't been great in his last couple of stops, but he could be a guy that could provide that veteran sort of leadership that that the Browns need, and particularly DTR needs right now. So, I mean, when you look at the combined experience of DTR and PJ Walker, that's a daunting task to ask these guys to get us to the playoffs now, particularly when you're dealing with a championship caliber defense and guys like Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio. They have to be looking around the room saying our chances now are on, a couple of guys that just, I'm sure they're going to get behind these guys and rally behind them. But, I want a veteran in that room that can help sort of steady the nerves. If it's DTR or if it's PJ Walker down the road, I don't know. But I don't know. Who are you guys tossing around? What names have you guys popped around?
Well, I thought Colt McCoy has done such a great job as a career backup that he could bring in that veteran leadership and kind of steady the waters and be like, hey, I've been here, right? Like, this is what you need to do. You were the backup. This is what you need to do when you're thrust into this role. And Colt McCoy's had to do that for multiple teams, the Cardinals, always. He's been thrust into being the starter, very much like DTR did in that first game. But, yeah, I mean, I would love – and I think Leroy Horde disagreed with me as well. I was like, yeah, if we could bring in Tom Brady, you do it tomorrow. And I said – I didn't say this to him, but at least if you're Andrew Berry, I think you make the phone call. He can tell you politely no, but I think you make the phone call because you're like, hey, we're giving you a championship caliber defense.
Yeah, I completely agree.
If there's any player out there, if there's any player in the history of the sport that you're calling in this situation, it's Tom Brady. So I think he's the obvious one. Now, I don't know that Colt McCoy entices me as much just because he hasn't been a starter outside of Arizona, and it hasn't been great. I think that there's some other names that do intrigue me a little bit. Nick Foles is one of them. He's shown that he can do this. As you mentioned, Jay, past couple of places, maybe it wasn't so good. Cam Newton's on that list. I think he's more of a big personality. So, I mean, I don't know him personally, so I can't speak to what that would be like in the locker room. Right. But there's got to be somebody that can just come in and just, as you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be an on-the-field player, but somebody that's a voice that can guide DTR in the right direction, I think it's much needed.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they're going to do. Well, I'm sure we'll find out this week. If I'm the Browns, I want this person in the building as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. If that's tomorrow, great. If it's Friday, great. The one thing that I'll say that the Browns have done well this year is when they were faced with a similar situation at kicker, they brought the right guy in. Like we had debated names because we knew that Cade York wasn't it. When he started missing that, when it becomes an epidemic, even in the preseason, you just realize pretty quickly he's got a damaged psyche at this point. And for a kicker, that's like a right arm for a quarterback. So when the psyche goes, you know that you've got to make a change. And we bantered about a bunch of names. One of them was Robbie Gould, who had a great year last year in San Francisco, and he's still out there. And we were kind of critical that they didn't bring Robbie in and they went with a guy that really didn't have much of a track record. They hit that out of the park. I mean, Dustin Hopkins has been unbelievable. And the big knock on him was he wasn't good from 50 out. The guy's got a leg. He's been a machine. They nailed that.
Well, it's funny. We had Matt Stover on the show, and he just happened to be the timing. He came on our show, and we did an interview with Matt Stover, and we were like, kicking in Cleveland is not easy. It's a daunting task. And he said, well, Dustin's from Texas. The wind blows in Texas all the time. And he's like,
we were both like, huh? What about Texas?
And he goes, I know. And he goes, you just have to kick into it and not be so finesse. You just have to kick through the wind. And he goes,
just go at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, I think Dustin will be just fine. And it was funny that he kind of had that foresight to know that he was going to be just fine because Matt was from Texas. So was Phil Dawson. And he was like, well, Dustin's from Texas. He'll be just fine. The wind always blows, and he's been used to kicking in the wind.
And that's the beauty of kickers. Like, there's so many nuances to kicking a football. When we sit down in our chair on Sunday and we watch the game, we always say, you had one job, kick the ball through the uprights. But it's so when you talk in depth, and I've had a number of conversations with Phil about this, there's so much more to it. And particularly kicking in Cleveland, because it's not just kicking into a wind. There's oftentimes crosswinds, and you can't look at the flags on the uprights. There's certain places where there are flags at the stadium that Phil said, I need a flag there because that's going to tell me where the ball's going to go. And there's all those little nuances that kickers know about that the average fan does not. So, they got the kicker thing right. And also, in truth, when Nick Chubb went down, I questioned whether or not they could get through. I figured they would sign Kareem Hunt, which they did, and that was a great move. But I questioned whether or not that was going to be enough. I still felt like they needed another back, and I thought that they would do that at the trade deadline. It's proven that they didn't need one. That it's kind of been by committee. I look at what Kareem Hunt has brought to this team. He gets the tough yards. He's been kind of a touchdown machine since he's come back. They're using Ford as the horse in the system. And although he did have a bad game 2 weeks ago, I think people forget that he was coming off a high ankle sprain and came back way sooner than anybody, especially a running back, comes back from that injury. So I think last week we're starting to see Jerome Ford now at 100%. So the Browns have made some pretty key assessments at running back and at kicker. And when the fan base was screaming, this isn't enough, you've got to do more, they got it right. Now, I still think they needed to do more at wide receiver. Even though they're in the midst of a nice season, this wide receiving core is not going to carry us on a playoff run. It just isn't. Amari Cooper is a great number one. We don't have a number two. We really don't. And I think that ultimately that will end up being the Achilles heel of this team. They're going to go as far as that receiving core takes it. And I don't think that's more than one win in the playoffs. I could be wrong. I hope I am. But, they've been right on a lot of these things. And I'm going to let them make the decision before I'm critical of it. A lot of folks are saying, oh, why did they let Josh Dobbs go? There was nobody screaming. When they traded Josh Dobbs, nobody was saying a word. Nobody.
That's true. Yeah.
And particularly because the way DTR played in the preseason. We all saw it. And we all bought the hype. Yeah. We were like, this dude is it. And then, he obviously wasn't it in his only start. I thought it was a mistake not to come back with him the next week. Give him a full week of preparation. And they yanked him. And my fear in that was, you're going to damage this young kid's psyche. You gave him one shot, and now you're going to bench him. So you basically told him, when you traded Josh Dobbs, you're the guy. And you gave him one start in which you told him a couple hours before kickoff that it's your show, and he didn't perform. And by the way, it was against a very, very good defense. And now you're going to sit him down for a guy who had way more turnovers than touchdowns in his brief NFL career. So I thought that was a mistake. But hey, look, if they get this right and he just gives us adequate play, we don't need him to carry the torch here. We just need him. Sometimes punts are good. Interceptions, poison pill. That's a game killer. Don't turn the ball over. If you're not sure of the completion, throw it away. Live to see another down. Play for another series. We've got a great punter and a great defense. That sets up for a lot of 17-14 wins. This is exactly how we beat the 49ers. I think that formula, it's not sexy. It's not going to drive people crazy. Watching the game, we're not going to get all excited about that. It's going to be frustrating, but you do what you have to do to win. And I think this team can do that. I think it's a race now to 10 or 11 wins. They've got 6. If you get 4 out of the last, what do they have, 8 games left?
Yep. Go 500 in the stretch, yeah.
Go 500 and get in the playoffs and see what happens.
Well, and you brought up a good point about someone like DTR being thrown into the fire 2 hours before a game, right?
Yeah.
Not taking first-team reps. And what's funny is a guy like Geno Smith, who's played an entire season, goes to the playoffs, goes into Baltimore, and gets treated basically the same way DTR did, and they weren't ready to throw Geno Smith out. They just said, oh, the Baltimore Ravens have a great defense, and the Seattle Seahawks had a bad day. Yeah, you're going to have bad days against that defense, right? A lot of teams do.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I think that's an interesting point where you're like, they didn't give them that next opportunity. Like, look, we threw you into a mess. Next week, you get the first team reps all week. Let's go and let's roll with you. And we might be in a better position now if we had done that and then had Deshaun come back in, because then he comes out this week and people are like, actually, he was fine, So
I agree. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I have hopes that he may not light it up this week. Here's the beauty. Their offense isn't that good. I don't think it's going to take, 31 points to win this game. I think 21 or maybe 17 will do it. The way our defense is playing and the way the Steelers offense has performed, they're not going to light anybody up. So if the defense comes with their hard hats on and they hold Pittsburgh to 14 points, now you're not asking a lot from DTR. You're asking him to hit open receivers, continue to grind the ball out on the ground. I thought they did a great job of that in Baltimore. The run game can win football games, especially when you pair it with a great defense. So churn clock, possess the ball, play defense, and I really like our chances. And when you look at our remaining schedule, it's not a world beater. It's not filled with, teams that we expect to come in here and to knock us off. So, I do like our chances. I don't think it's all gloom and doom. And, I could be wrong. If the DTR goes out there and stinks it up and we lose by 2 touchdowns, then my finger will get closer to the panic button. But right now, I think we're okay.
Well, what's funny is Vegas only changed the line by 2 points. It went from 4.5 to 2.5. And that told me that, to your point, this defense is playing at such a championship caliber level. They know the Browns are going to be in every game this year, no matter who the quarterback is. And to your point, as long as that quarterback doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to be in all these games, right? Because it's just going to come down to possessions. And
we beat the 49ers with PJ Walker,
Right.
So
I guess that brings me to a quick point here. The Browns have faced adversity every single week of the season. Realistically, it seems that way. But with the struggles of Deshaun Watson early, we were very vocal on this podcast and said, hey, he doesn't have to go out and be a hero. You don't have to play hero ball. Just be a distributor. You've got so many playmakers, whether it's David Njoku, Amari Cooper. At that time, you had Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford. You have so many high caliber offensive skill position players. Just get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. And I think that same mentality holds true, Jay, for whether it's DTR or PJ Walker. You don't have to go out and be the hero, be a distributor of the football, and put the focus and emphasis on your defense.
That's it. Defense wins championships. And I know that there's been a swing in the NFL over the last 10 years to quarterback play and offense. But I also think in the last 2 years, the pendulum has sort of swung back. We don't really have a whole lot of juggernaut, high-powered offenses. We thought that the Chargers were going to be that. I mean, they've got Austin Eckler, and he's so diverse. And we thought, this team's going to put up 35 a game. I know the Bengals have been dealing with some injuries with Burrow and now some wide receivers. We thought that they were in that juggernaut category. We thought Buffalo was in that juggernaut category. We thought Kansas City was in that juggernaut category. They've all looked very human this year.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's been a shift in resources league-wide. I think the past was you've got to have this franchise quarterback and a passing game. And I think, when the offenses zig, NFL front office has said, okay, we've got to bolster our defense. We need to put more of our resources into high picks in the defensive backfield and particularly the defensive front. And so what we've seen is the quarterback play, the great quarterback play of the Manning and Brady era, which seemed to be transitioning into the Mahomes and this modern day quarterback era. It just seems like it's hit a bit of a speed bump. And we're well positioned to take advantage of that. Our defense, remember, was built because we looked around and we said, we've got Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow in our division, and they aren't going anywhere. So we better beef up our defenses. And I think Andrew Berry has done that. So that's good for us. That's really good for us. We don't have to beat Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, and even Miami in shootouts. We can force them to score, 17 or fewer. Then the ask on us is a lot less offensively. So, I know that the mood today was one of despair, and it kind of felt like a funeral. And I will admit, when I first heard the news, it took the wind out of my sails immediately.
Oh, yeah.
But as I've thought more about it as the day has gone on and you sort of process where they are, and that point is a great point that you mentioned about the Vegas line. Vegas is usually right. They're right more than they're wrong. And
that's how to keep the lights on
and build 30-story casino hotels made out of marble and very expensive materials. They're doing that on the backs of our losses. When we don't know what Vegas knows. So the fact that line is only shifted 2 points,
I know.
I think that tells you. And again, they're looking at it too. They said, well, this team is the same team that stopped this high-powered San Francisco 49ers team. And the way that I explained how we have to get things done moving forward, that's exactly the way we beat the 49ers. We got into more of a shootout with Baltimore, but that's because the circumstances dictated it. We blinked and we were down 14-0.
Correct. Yeah.
So, our defense sort of the same thing against Seattle. It felt like, oh my God, this game's out of control and it's 8 minutes old. But then the defense really clamped down. And, of all the losses that we've had, I know we've had a couple of wins that could have been losses. But man, that Seattle game is just driving me nuts now because as much as it hurt in the moment, if you're 7-2 right now, you're asking DTR to get you 3, maybe 4 wins out of the last 8. That's easier. Completely doable, especially when you look at some of the teams that we have on our schedule. And I know we probably stole one against San Francisco, and some would say maybe even Indianapolis. But God, if you're 7-2, it's a completely different ball game. But it is what it is,
Well, as I say, I was at that game, Jay, with Larry with Lorello Vineyards, and we were sitting there. And as soon as that play happened, I'm like, we came back in that game all the way to the end, and we were playing bully ball in that fourth quarter. I'm like, we're going to win this thing. And then when that happened, I'm like, oh, well, now the 12th man's back in this game. You literally let the 12th man in Seattle back into this football game. And I'm like, I left that game with just, like you said, that just pit in your stomach. And the fans looked at us and they're like, you should have won this game. I'm like, yeah, you think? Like, we beat you.
Before the play, I was watching with a group of baseball teammates. We were playing in a tournament in Florida, and we were all at a Browns bar, and we were watching. And I said before the play, this is very simple. If we run the ball, we win. If we throw the ball, we lose. And everybody's like, that's kind of dramatic. And I said, there's no reason. First of all, you're going to stop the clock on an incompletion. I punt the football and make them go 90 yards against that defense. I still can't believe that they made that decision and that play call in that spot. As much as I like Kevin Stefanski and as smart as I think he is, sometimes I just don't get it. I don't get it. I'll never understand the play calling in that situation. It's 3rd and 3, run the ball, and I'm okay with not getting the first down. I really am. If the worst case scenario there is you have to punt and you make them go 80. If you're Seattle, they're not happy with that decision. Instead, we give them the football and almost plus territory, and we all saw what happened.
Well, and I think you don't do that with that quarterback, more importantly, with a PJ Walker.
Right. Maybe if you want to call that play with your veteran, maybe, but not for a guy who's got 6 touchdowns and 18 turnovers in his brief NFL career. You've got to know your personnel. You've got to understand the situation. And I don't get it. But even with that, even sitting here at 6-3, I still think there's a clear path. I really do.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jay, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time for us. This is great. We learned a lot. It was great talking to you. Tell our listeners where they can find you.
So we do the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show every Monday through Friday. It's a YouTube show. It's very easy to find. You can type it either into a navigation bar or a search bar, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, or just UCSS. It's going to come up. Our YouTube page will come up. Hit subscribe. We've noticed that this is really bizarre, but about half of our views come from out of the state of Ohio. I mean, as you guys know, the fan base is not just nationwide.
Correct.
We have regular daily visitors or watchers from India, Australia, England. There's like 7 countries. These people interact with our chat room every day on the show. We've got a guy that watches us at like 3 a.m. New Zealand time. It's just
Crazy.
Bananas to me. So yeah, you can get us. We're the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're a 5-day-a-week show. We also do a post-game show, which starts at the 2-minute warning of every football game, whether it's a Sunday, Thursday, or Monday. And I'm really enjoying doing the show. It's a lot of fun, particularly in football season. And I encourage all Browns fans to check us out.
We appreciate it. We'd love to have you back. We'd love to have you back, Jay. You're great.
Yeah, thanks,
absolutely.
It's Circle K.
And with that, let's go ahead and bring on Greg Williams. Greg, thanks for taking the time. How are you?
I'm very good, Allie. Dustin, thanks for.
Oh, we lost him.
Had a chance.
He's back.
To you for a few minutes here before I came on, and you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I think it's great for the fans.
Well, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
what we're here for. It's a show by the fans for the fans. And that's exactly it, Greg. Like sometimes it's hard to come on this podcast after a tough loss like that. But I want to just kind of get your overall thoughts on that game. I know that there's plenty of finger pointing and blame to go around. But ultimately, sometimes it does come down to a lack of execution as well. Your overall thoughts on a pretty embarrassing loss to Baltimore?
Well, the big thing is it's never just one thing. And the other thing is that let's not slight in any way the Baltimore Ravens and John Harbaugh and that staff. And then Todd Monken, the new offensive coordinator, he and I were on staffs together and has done a very, very good job on adapting things that are very, very good for Lamar Jackson. And I thought Todd did a very good job in this game. He's gone against Jim Schwartz defenses before on making sure that Lamar was comfortable, getting the ball out of his hands very fast. He didn't have to hold on to the ball at all. And then doing the type of run game things that obviously, when you're getting off the ball the way Cleveland does and Jim Schwartz defenses does, they were able to take a couple of shots there on the offense that way. Defensively, I thought they still played well, but it's hard to play after 3 takeaways or 3 turnovers by the offense and shorter fields. They didn't, they had more red zone opportunities in this game than they had before in the past and got some points put on them that way. But when you look, they were only 4 for 12 on 3rd down, the Ravens, and they were still, underneath 300 yards. And in today's game is, very seldom, offensively, you look at yourself and you don't get 330, 340 plus and haven't done what needs to be done offensively. And then defensively, when you keep them under that point, take the points off the board on a couple of those things that I thought Lamar was impressive down in the red zone with 2 touchdown passes and 2 touchdown runs. But in those situations, defensively, it wasn't as a tough a day as it was on the offensive side of the ball. And, we're going to have to go through there when we talk about that here in a few minutes with all of a sudden Deshaun's not going to be up. You go backup quarterback, and then what do you do as a coaching staff? What do you do as a play caller to adapt to the quarterback or the people you have on the field at that time? It's not about scheme. You have to adapt to what they can do and give them confidence in having multiple successful plays in a row, and then you can take your shots. Then you can take, some gimmicky kind of a plays, but you got to get their confidence right. And especially a young quarterback all of a sudden coming into his first, I'm sure it was somewhat of a culture shock.
Yeah, I would like to speak about that, Greg, because we found out about an hour before kickoff, 45 minutes before kickoff, that obviously DTR was going to go out there. Being on the defensive side of the ball like you have been for, the Browns and other teams, what do you do in your mind? Is that you're like, are we going to pin our ears back? Are we going to change what we're going to do defensively when you see a situation like that? Because even though they have similar skill sets, DTR and Deshaun, obviously they're definitely 2 different types of quarterbacks you're dealing with there. What does that change for you from what you do on the defensive side of the ball an hour before a kickoff or something like that when you've already kind of devised a plan for the week?
Well, the big thing here is this, and there's not very many people that do what I have done for 40 plus years. There's not very many at all in making the quarterback, because I played that, and then all of a sudden I was an offensive coordinator too for quite a while, is that you have to make the quarterback make the decision of what you're doing schematically post-snap and not pre-snap. So how do you go about disguising what you're getting ready to do prior to the actual snap taking place and then changing after that? Doesn't happen in college football very much anymore. Doesn't happen in high school football at all. And so all of a sudden here, and I was watching some of the defensive things that the Ravens were doing is that they were rolling their coverages. They were showing loads one way, coming from the other way. And that caused a little bit of paralyzing from DTR. You could see too long, or not getting rid of the ball in the lanes that were open for that particular coverage, that all of a sudden they had a play called against that. I thought the Ravens did a good job on changing the disguise, but once you see they're having that problem, the Ravens pin their ears back, and they're going to make a young guy have to realize what he's gotten into now, and they're going to be a little bit more aggressive. They were, and it's your job as the play caller, it's your job as the quarterback to talk and discuss about getting things into more protected kind of plays. And that's one of the things that we did when I was here and took over with Baker. And, when at the halfway point of the season, when they made the change and then I took over, Baker had given up, or we as a team had given up 38 sacks and 41 hits on the quarterback. In the last 8 games, we only gave up 2 sacks and 7 hits on the quarterback. How? Why? Because we adapted to what Baker could do, and plus having that defensive background helping him recognize and see, get the ball out of your hands, the right throws. Let these receivers catch and run with the ball. And then when you have your calculated shots, make sure you've got full max protection, that the quarterback's not worrying about some live rusher that he doesn't know about. Okay, max out your protection and take those calculated shots. Those are the things you do with young quarterbacks, and I think they could have done a little bit better job with that.
I agree entirely. And I want to get your perspective on this Browns defense. Greg, if you look at just the personnel from last year to this year, a lot of it stayed the same, right? You have a lot of the same guys that are out on the field that were there last year, but it's like 2 separate defenses. It's like night and day. I've been very open with giving praise to the interior of the defensive line. We know last year that was hot garbage, essentially. And then this year they are playing lights out, and it's allowed the secondary and it's allowed the linebackers to do their job in a more effective manner. Now, do you attribute that success really to the scheme or to the players? Where do you give the most credit here defensively?
Well, it's no doubt in my mind. I know exactly. It's Jim Schwartz, and Jim Schwartz on how he goes about teaching from the front. We brought the wide nine technique in with Jim Washburn when Jim Schwartz and we were all together down at the Tennessee Titans back in the late 90s when we hired Jim Schwartz and moved him up through the ranks. And he coached with me when I was the coordinator down there. So he understands the presence of those interior guys, and he's doing a very good job. There's no such thing as catch and read technique being taught by any defensive lineman. It's attack, get off the ball, make the offensive lineman, make whoever has to block you in runs or passes have to. And even if you end up wrong on the wrong side of the block, the people behind you, the linebackers, the safeties, the corners, can compensate now and bail you out. Okay. It's not about fitting on a block. It's about leveraging the ball at all times and then tracking the force and keeping it tight. Jim's done a really good job with those interior defensive linemen to not allow the step-up lanes that were happening last year a lot. You cut those outside rushers or speed guys, be it defensive linemen and linebackers, safeties, and you're blitzing them, but yet the quarterback can step up inside the pocket because your interior line playing the right way. The inside of that defensive line right now is playing strong that allows Miles and all the other rushers to cut it loose. It's been fun for me to watch.
Greg, obviously you've been at the head coaching level, been a defense coordinator, head coach. There was a lot made of Deshaun was medically cleared to play in this game, and then he warmed up. And then, of course, I don't know if you're able to see any of Andrew Berry's press availability today. He kind of did his State of the Union, and he said it was very clear by everybody's eyeballs on the sidelines that he just wasn't going to be able to go. He wasn't going to be able to make the throws that he was able to do. You've been in that situation. You obviously trust the player's body and what he thinks he can do. What did you think of that kind of situation? And then, of course, obviously, Andrew Berry coming out today and defending like, hey, we were all on the same page. We didn't think it was a smart thing to do with rollout with Deshaun on Sunday.
Well, I've been through several of those before, not several, tons of those before. And it's obvious it's going to catch more publicity when it's the quarterback. But
sure,
every position we go out, and I've always made that as a head coach, as a coordinator, I've always made that decision 2 hours before kickoff. Okay, so we're out there 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes before kickoff, and we're going through that type of an injury evaluation with that particular player, that particular position, full speed and ready to go. People that are any good at watching that, feeling that, sensing that, they can see, they can understand. I can tell just by standing out there on what's the sound of the ball coming out of the quarterback's hands? What's the velocity coming out of his hands? Wait a minute. Is there some type of a longer release point because he doesn't have the quick snap in his throwing process with his hips and his feet and his legs coordinating with the shoulder that was being evaluated? I'm sure all those guys evaluated that. I'm sure they got a chance to see that. And it's always about protecting the player first. You got to make sure you're doing that. I do think probably because this bye week is coming up here, may have had some type of an influence on the decision there too, because they knew they were going to get a chance to, talk to them for 2 hours. 2 games, 2 weeks down, as opposed to just 1 week down and then back up and ready to go. But they made the right decision with making sure you talk with Deshaun and you talking with all the medical experts out there too. But from a coach's perspective, the player learns to trust you because he knows you can feel over just watch. And the good coaches have a good feel for that along with, seeing it and watching it. And they did the right thing.
You mentioned the bye week. I'm curious if you can paint the picture here for us fans of what really goes on during the bye week. We know this is a self-scout week, especially coming off of a loss. What can we expect that this Cleveland Browns team is going to go through over the next, essentially 2 weeks until they play again? What does that look like behind the scenes?
Well, I will tell you this. Thank you for asking that question. And I smile and laugh because all the players and coaches that have been with me have seen the section in the playbook that we have in the playbook outside of scheme and everything, a philosophy section. And we have a philosophy on every situational thing throughout the course of a 12-month period with the team. And we have a bye-week philosophy and what we're going to do. And after all these years of success and after all these years of trials and errors, you put together the best type of a plan that you can for your own team in the situation it is right now. Because it's early, your bye week changes a little bit now because it's earlier than it is when it's later in the season. Here's some fundamental things, some things that are very important. Get your injured players healthy. Get everybody on the team, and we're tracking every single snap. We're tracking all of the wear and tear on everybody's body. Get them back fresh. That does not mean that you don't practice. That does not mean that you don't go and continue to work and rep the things that have to be high-speed decisions, but you have shorter practices. You also do not have contact in those practices, and you're going through the things that you need to continue to rep and technique out, schematic out, communication out, do that with the players. Now, as a coaching staff, this week, I buried every single staff I've ever had, and we go through a deep dive of self-scout. Every single thing from a schematic to time on the clock, to situation, to area on the field, to split of a receiver, to split of a defensive lineman, to split of an offensive lineman, our body language, how we're lining up, how deep we're lining up. And what we're doing is we're going through the film analysis of things and the analytical statistical things of the thing to what is the opponent seeing us? What are they gaining? And I say this now without it being offensive. After all these years, there's not very many surprising things that can ever happen in a game with me. You know what? I see what we're doing. They see what we're doing. They see on film. The biggest thing in the world is how do you make the decision change, like I said, from pre-snap to post-snap? Those are some of the things from a motion on offense to a shift on offense to an alignment on offense, a formation on offense. What about down and distance to the every blade of grass? And then, we have the field broken into 20 different areas of the field on the tendencies that are in that area of the field. So when you deep dive and go through all those things for yourself, you come back out of the bye week, number one, with a refreshed look, but you also come back out of the bye week with an understanding of where you are as a team and where you have to focus on to continue to get better. It's really a great time, and this week is very, very critical.
Yeah, as I say, Greg, it's kind of like you kind of have to kind of reset and create your identity of what football team you're going to be on the field for the rest of the year and get those guys healthy and be part of that. Greg, it was great to visit with you in Cleveland a couple of days ago. It was fun to put on the Super Bowl ring from the New Orleans Saints. And so my question to you is, you see the current staff, you see the players, you see who we have in place. Do you think we currently have a Super Bowl type of team that can go to the Super Bowl with what we have? Or do you think what would need to be changed incrementally, or what would you see the differences that would need to be done to get to that elite level defense, like you said, would need to probably have to win a Super Bowl and on offense?
Well, I would say this is that as you go down and track at the different coaches that's on that staff, you've got several Super Bowl winning coaches on that staff that have done that before in the position areas they've been. It is a collective team effort. It's not just one idea. It's not just one area of the team. Okay. pro football, the National Football League, is the most fundamentally big time team oriented sport that there is. There's way too much superstar status promoted onto these guys. And, you know, I've had an opportunity to coach over 2,500 NFL athletes now. When I say out of those 2,500, you know, you're going to talk about 30 or 40 of them superstar status, Hall of Fame status. And I always tease, and when I say this to the guys, is I had to take 2 guys to go kick that one guy's ass. Okay. So how do you do that? It happens very often. Okay. Every single person out there inside the white lines can play at a high level. Every single coach in this league has proven himself as he's risen up through the ranks. Now, I will tell you this: stress beats everything sometimes. And how do people as players and as coaches handle stressful situations? Can you block those things out? Do your job, understand, okay, get these guys to play faster, smarter, tougher for longer in every single position area. And then don't be surprised that you're at the winning edge and you're on the winning team at the end when you get them to do that. Don't nonsense that doesn't matter how to win that play. That's the thing about the National Football League. And this is, they got some really strong staffs, strong guys on this staff. You've got some young coaches too. They're trying to bring along, but that's, you know, the reality is that don't shake your head if you don't belong. You know, Jerry Glanville said a long time ago that the NFL stands for not for long, and it doesn't take very long for you to get booted out of the league.
And on a little bit of a separate note here, just pure curiosity. I've always wondered, from a coordinator standpoint, you mentioned Todd Monken earlier, and he called. I noticed this in the game against Cleveland. He calls the game from the press box. What is your take on coordinators up in the box versus on the field? You know, what is the advantage versus the disadvantage to that? Is it just personal preference? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Vision. There are certain people that really don't have an open amount of vision. I can stand on the sideline, look down the line of scrimmage and see all 22 players. I can see all 22 of them. I don't have to watch the film. I know exactly what happened. Some people in all walks of life are very tunnel visioned, and they need to get up there into the box to see more of those type of things. That's great. I don't want to be in the box to where I can't go look another grown man in the eye to be able to help him get ready to go tackle, sack, intercept, gain a touchdown, score a touchdown. I want to be able to look another grown man in the eyes and be down there with them as I read their body language. Some guys really do need to be in the box. I'm just not one of those guys because there is better vision for them. But I learned a long time ago, I don't need somebody else to tell me what happened on the play because I can see it all right there on the thing. Plus, I'm around the players, and we're talking every single snap. As when we off the field, we go through every single snap, and I'm getting their ideas and their feel of how, you know, to make adjustments in the game for them, not for me, for them. When you're in the box, you have limited access to be able to talk to players down there in that fist fight. When I'm on the sideline, I'm there with them, and I'll never change that. That's just my philosophy.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I was going to say, I appreciate the time. I know you've got another meeting to go on to after this, Greg, but Allie and I just appreciate the opportunity. We'd love to have you back on sometime. We could probably do a whole hour show with you for sure. So believe us.
You guys got my contact information now, and I will tell you this. You guys do a great job, and it's important for the fans. It really is. And I'm also going to be a part of a big documentary film that we're going to honor one of the greatest high school coaches in the country, the former high school coach here from Ignatius High School in the Cleveland area. And we're going to have, you know, Bill Belichick, me, Roger Goodell, you know, Tom Brady, lots of different people on this show honoring him about the impact that a high school coach has on all the young men ladies that he has the chance to be around and coach in that time. And so I'm looking forward to doing that and looking forward to helping you all. And I can't wait to get back inside the white lines and start coaching.
Well, thanks for your time. We appreciate it so much. We learned so much just talking to you. So anytime you were welcome on this podcast, Greg, thanks for taking the time for us. We appreciate it.
All right. Good luck. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Go Browns. Go Browns. That is Greg Williams. Wow. Just incredible there, Dustin. We get a lot of former players or current players on this podcast that we get to talk to and get their perspective. But very rarely do we get to talk to a very recent head coach in the National Football League and to learn the ins and outs of what goes into it. Because at the end of the day, as fans, we can get all up in arms. We're emotional. We know this. But everybody on that field, coaches included, they're human beings. They are human beings, and it's hard for us to remember that sometimes. So really, really fun talking to former Browns coach Greg Williams.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, Allie, to double down on what he said about, I don't think we've ever had a guest on the show talk about the stress of a coach and the stress of the player, and how you have to kind of push that out and keep that away from you as a player and as a coach. And you have to learn how to balance that, right? Because that's, I always say this, you hear these players are like, oh, we don't look at social media. Oh, we don't do this. And I'm like, nah, yeah, you do. Yeah, you can't completely block it all out. And you know what's interesting, Allie? You can just feel just in his conversation we talked about on previous podcasts here, Greg Williams has that I give a damn on the sidelines, right? Like that comes across in the person that he is. And I thought it was very interesting, the point he made about Baker. Baker was, not in his comfort zone. And when he took over from Freddie Kitchens, he said, look, get the damn, he said this, he wasn't as PC as he was on this, but he was like, I told him to get the damn ball out. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, if you get the damn ball out, they ain't going to sack you. It's in the receiver's hand. And he was really very adamant about making sure that ball was getting out quicker and quicker and quicker. And I felt that was DTR's problem on Sunday. He was being put in an uncomfortable situation where if he could just get the ball out quickly, get it to his receivers, let them do the work, the tight ends, or the running back out of the backfield, I think DTR would have been gotten into a much better, comfortable situation in the offense on Sunday. And like he said, when I'm on the sidelines, I can go look in the eyes of that guy and go, look, what are you seeing out there? What are you feeling? Okay, is this too much for you, right? And like he said, he's been a head coach, offense, defensive coordinator. He's probably coached every position in the National Football League over 40 years. But man, Allie, he is just a wealth of knowledge, and it was awesome to have him on the show and really get his perspective.
Yeah, most definitely. We're going to get back into the conversation here about that game and then look ahead. But before we do so, if you're wondering what you should have for dinner, the answer for you is Angelo's Pizza. Head on over to Lakewood to get your hands on the best pizza in all of Northeast Ohio. They do it right at Angelo's. They start out with a buttery crust, and they do double layered toppings. It's great in the restaurant, at home, and even just as great the following day. Dustin, real quick, why don't you tell our listeners about Lorello and what they've got going on?
Well, Lorello, I've spent a lot of time with Lorello in the last 72 hours. But guys, the Here We Go Brownies wine, we got a little surprise for you. I'm just going to say watch Channel 19 News this Friday. There's going to be a fun little story about the Here We Go Brownies show and the wine. Take a look at that. But by the way, they just don't have that, Allie. If you're a fan of the whites, if you like the reds, if you like the ice wines, they have it all out there in Geneva. But a great time to take the ladies, your